Good morning and welcome to Memoirs of a Thinking Man. Today we'll be looking at illuminating other people's lives. Julia Baird, in her reflective work Bright Shining, How Grace Changes Everything, writes with luminous clarity about ordinary people who, often without realizing it, shine grace into others' lives. She describes these as people who radiate warmth, kindness, strength, and light in ways that heal and restore others. They may be nurses, janitors, grandmothers, bus drivers, strangers in waiting rooms, people who make a small but unforgettable difference. These are the light bringers, the ones who choose decency over cruelty, compassion over indifference, even in darkness. Today we explore how we can be bright, shining people in others' lives, how our lives can radiate light that encourages, uplifts, and heals. In Matthew 5:14-16, we read, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." In Galatians 6:9 we read, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Lest any should become discouraged, Paul reminds his readers that the rewards are certain, even if not immediate. You do not harvest a field of wheat the day after you sow the seed. So, in the spiritual realm, the rewards surely follow faithful sowing in due seasons. Not all acts of light come with fanfare. Sometimes the brightest lights are lit quietly through a word of encouragement, a meal left at a doorstep, or simply being present. After Julia Baird received her cancer diagnosis, an anonymous letter arrived in her mailbox. It contained just these words: "You are seen, you are loved, you are not alone." No name, no return address, just grace on paper. Julia later reflected, "I've never forgotten that stranger's words. They stitched something in me. Not a sermon, not a miracle, just simple sacred kindness, and yet it brought healing." Ask, what simple gesture can I offer today? Maybe a text message, maybe sitting beside someone in pain. These small sparks can start holy fires in hurting hearts. In Romans 12:15 we read, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn." Empathy is the capacity for sharing vicariously the feelings and emotions of others. Our tendency is to be jealous when others rejoice and to pass by when they mourn. God's way is to enter into the joys and sorrows of those around us. We often think we need answers, but people mostly need presence, someone to walk beside them, even when the way is dark. In one hospital ICU, a janitor, unnoticed by most staff, began quietly sitting beside a comatose patient. Each night he would take the patient's hand and whisper silent prayers. No one asked him to, no one saw him do it. Days later, the patient miraculously woke and asked the nurse, "Where's the man who held my hand in the dark?" He hadn't preached, he hadn't healed, he simply stayed. Who in your life needs someone to stand beside them, even if you don't have the right words? Don't underestimate the light of steadfast presence. In John 15:13 we read, "Greater love has no other than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Their love should be of such a nature that they should be willing to die for one another. People who are willing to do this do not fight with each other. The greatest example of human self-sacrifice was for a man to die for his friends. The disciples of Christ are called to this type of devotion. Some lay down their lives in a literal sense. Others spend their whole lives in untiring service for the people of God. The Lord Jesus is the example. He laid down his life for his friends. Of course, they were enemies when he died for them, but when they are saved, they become his friends. So it is correct to say that he died for his friends as well as for his enemies. True brightness often involves sacrifice. Sometimes the brightest lives are forged through suffering. They shine not because life is easy, but because they choose light in spite of hardship. In Rwanda, after the horrors of the genocide, a woman made a decision that defied logic and even pain. She took in the orphan child of the man who had murdered her husband. When asked why, she simply said, "I could not undo the past, but I could choose grace in the present." That's not cheap grace. That's not sentimental forgiveness. That is light that costs something, and it's the kind of light that heals the world. Are we willing to inconvenience ourselves? To forgive when it hurts? To serve when no one notices? That is when we become truly luminous. A school teacher once pulled a struggling student aside and gently whispered, "You matter." There were no fireworks, just a simple sentence spoken at the right time. Years later, that student wrote, "That moment saved my life." One sentence, one soul, one light switched on in the dark. We live in a world starving for brightness, where cruelty is loud and kindness often quiet. But remember the words of Jesus, "You are the light of the world." Not you might be, you are. Let your light shine through your quiet acts of kindness, through your faithful presence, through sacrificial love. You may never know whose life your light will illuminate, but God does. This week, be the one who stops and sees, who whispers hope, who holds a hand in the dark. Because bright shining people like you light up the world one sacred moment at a time.